It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I know the anxiety that comes from watching a loved one struggle with a nonlinear path. This podcast was created to fight back against the narrow picture of success painted by social media. Each week, we share authentic stories from people who changed course, failed, and ultimately found their own definition of success. These are the stories you need to hear to prove that changing your mind is common, and you don't have to have it all figured out at 18. If you're a parent or a young adult looking for a little proof, you're home. Now let's get into today's episode. If you'd like to explore how I can help your young adult, schedule a free consultation through my website link in the show notes. Today, my guest is Dr. Max Doshay. Max received an undergraduate degree in psychology from Kenyon College, has a master's and doctorate in psychology from California School of Professional Psychology, and he's a father of a 4-year-old daughter and an 18-month-old son. His claim to fame is that he's a psychologist cosplaying as a startup CEO. We're going to get into that during today's interview, so let's not wait any longer. Here's Max. Max, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Of course, really excited to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I am just over the moon to have you as a guest because I feel like we've started to get to know each other professionally, but I really want to know you personally in terms of your story leading to how you got to where you are now. So selfishly, I'm looking forward to this because I get to learn more about you.
Awesome. Well, happy to share the meandering path that is my professional and personal existence.
All right, let's just dive in. Why don't you tell the listeners, where did you grow up and what was the messaging that you were receiving about what you were supposed to be doing after high school?
Yes. Grew up in San Diego, California, still in San Diego, California. For those who have been to San Diego, California, you understand why there are worse places to be than exist here. Love San Diego, super plugged into the community. As far as messages that I was given both by mom and dad growing up, really what was instilled in me, and I don't think explicitly or directly, was what I kind of deemed this concept of confident humility with how we approach success, which is having faith that you can figure things out and that you have the capabilities to be successful, and that I internally, mom and dad talking to me you, Max, have the capabilities to be super successful, and you don't need to brag about it. You don't need to talk about it. You need to externally carry yourself in a very overtly humble kind of way. So it's this balancing act of external humility and internal confidence that even if I don't know it, I can figure it out because you have the capability to do it. And we want to foster in you to give you the tools that you need to be able to realize that potential. I wouldn't say pressure was put on me growing up. I think any pressure provided was me to myself, of recognizing what I could or couldn't accomplish and wanting to actualize it.
Yeah. I would say, just for reflection, in the time that I've known you professionally, humility is definitely a way that I would describe you, right? This very, very clear to me. And again, I'm just sharing my perspective. So clearly you are a product of how you were raised, because it still shows up that way, which is I deem you an expert in what it is that you do. And you, unlike a lot of your similar peers across treatment spaces, you don't present as having an ego in the game. And so, and maybe that's a part of your internal dilemma, but outwardly there's no ego that seems to be present, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I would say internally I have an ego. And what I mean by that is, call it ego, call it self-confidence. It's it's going to sound terrible. I know I'm good at what I do, but I'm not insecure in that I need to outwardly display or outwardly prove to you that I know what I'm talking about or I know what I'm doing, because that creates distance and can create unhelpful or unneeded power dynamics if we're talking about like the clients we work with. But even
100%.
professional, it's like, it's a big turnoff for me when I run into a peer in the field called a psychiatrist, a psychologist, another CEO, whoever. And it's like, whoa, you really think you're better than everybody else. Like, I don't want to sit in a room with that energy, let alone like work with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we subscribe to the same philosophy of like types of people that we want to surround ourselves with. So, okay. And let me back this up. I'm not sure in the 325 plus interviews that I've had that I've ever interviewed somebody that was born and raised in San Diego. And so I'm going to say something which feels very, there's less, like it's a great place to grow up.
Yeah.
Worst places to be. It's pretty fantastic. I just picture the pressure academically to be different than the lens and community in which I was raised outside of DC. But I say that, and all I know is what I grew up with. So I'm just kind of curious. I know you said like from like how you got the support or direction from your parents, it was less on that academics, but this is like me being off script and just kind of curious. Is there like an academic pressure that exists in San Diego?
Well, here's the thing. Like, well, one, I'll start out with a dirty little secret that's going to contradict myself. I was born in New York City. But like, we want to talk about how I identify. I am like the farthest from you can be from being a New Yorker in every sense of the word. So it is the dirty little secret. I've been in San Diego for 95% of my life, but I'm a New Yorker, which is I don't know how I feel about this going out in a podcast forum by admitting that outwardly, because I identify as a San Diegan. But
I'm so sorry.
Yes, I know, it's really rough. But yes, raised in San Diego. I was spiritually born a San Diegan, let's put it that way. But as far as like academic pressure in San Diego, like, yes, my parents were very fostering, but like they were very intense people. Or are intense people. I think if I less minded my P's and Q's, like I would have been provided more external prodding and pressure to do well academically. As far as like the environment of San Diego, I went to a very lovey-dovey high school. And what I mean by that, it was like a lot about like social emotional wellness and learning. And very for like the time, not to like date myself, but we're talking like 20 years ago, when I was like graduating high school, that was very like not in the water, so to speak, like what social emotional wellness is and integrating that into a high school, like not a thing. It kind of was accidentally just the environment they cultivated focused on that, and was very like non-cutthroat from an academic perspective. And it's more of like, if you're not doing well academically, it's how can I provide you support, not that you're doing something wrong. I would say San Diego as a whole, San Diego is, I want to say, I think it's like the second or third most expensive place to live in the country. Like it's way up there, which by definition means you have a more than the average city, a lot of successful people that live there because they need to afford to live there.
Yeah.
So, it can create an environment where there's a lot of high achievers in the atmosphere. So there can be a pressure for that social comparison, can relate to this definitely as like a parent, being a parent now, but like comparing your kid to their kid, like let's line up here. Where is my kid in the unofficial pecking order of the class? I think the school I went to, whether it was purposeful or not, protected me from that my high school kind of protected me from the environment, in that it didn't feel hierarchical in any sense of like measuring on who's the most successful here, call it academically or athletically or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Thank you for going off script with me on that one. I think I just like really wanted to do a deep dive of like really what was it like to be raised in San Diego, and like just hear the differences geographically and culturally that also tie to, again, some level of academic kind of focus.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to compare San Diego to anywhere else because I've lived in pretty much only San Diego. But San Diego has a reputation of being a very chill place. Even if you compare San Diego to 100 miles north, Los Angeles, I will tell you, San Diegans and I think it's Angelinos is the technical term. People from Los Angeles are very different people.
Yeah.
Very different people. San Diego's more laid back in general. However, like I said, because of the high cost of living, it is this really weird balance of chill, high achieving people, which I would like to think I do embody a bit of that personality. I'm successful professionally, but I have a pretty low body temperature from just how I move about the world.
Okay, now let's get to how did you even get to where you are, but let's kind of rein that back, right? We just talked about what it was like to graduate from a high school that clearly is more social, emotionally focused, or just happens to kind of protect you from like the outside world where maybe there's more pressure on kind of like what comes after high school. So what did you do? Where did you go? How did we get to where Max is today?
Yeah. So, I mean, how far back do you want me to go here? So the high school I graduated from, San Diego Jewish Academy. I am Jewish, emphasize on the word ish. There is that word Jewish in the high school. It's not a religious high school. So I went to that for high school. But for middle and elementary school, I went to a pretty cutthroat academic, more traditional setting. And my parents made, to not my choice at the time, halfway through 10th grade, I go home for winter break and they tell me halfway through the year, out of nowhere, doing great at the other school, no issue socially. Oh, you're switching schools. You're going to a new school for the second semester. Did not appreciate that choice. But in moving to this new environment, I realized how correct of a choice it was, as wow, this really fits my vibe as far as really attuned to social emotional wellness. And I think honestly that switch is where kind of those foundation blocks were set that drew me to the world of psychology, as far as an emphasis on how well are you as a human being, mentally, social, emotionally, and how just that wellness can create stability and success in a bazillion different directions. So, when I was in high school, my goal was, even though it's wasn't totally rooted in reality, wanted to play professional baseball. Baseball was my whole life. I was a very successful high school baseball player, went to college, played baseball in college. And what is very interesting, and this is very interesting considering what my personality is like, I was a head case as a collegiate athlete, from the perspective of very internally intense and aggressive, from the perspective of I want to be the best, and really would just beat the crap out of myself. And I definitely got in my own way from being the level of success I wanted to be collegiately. Forget about professionally, but collegiately, just because of me getting in my own way. And
you're talking about mental performance, essentially.
From a mental performance standpoint, when you're in high school, every player on a collegiate athletic team was the best player on their high school team. So you're used to being the big fish in the small pond in high school. Now, all of a sudden, you're not that. You're dealing with failure more often than you were at any point in your entire life athletically.
Yeah.
And some people are able to handle it. Some people aren't. I wasn't, and was just a miserable baseball player from emotionally. My junior year of college, I got the wonderful yet terrible blessing of blowing out my rotator cuff, which, effectively ended my baseball career, and also the death of an identity that I had for my entire lifespan of oh, Max, he plays baseball. That wasn't the thing anymore. It's off the table. Not just for right now, permanently. I mean, I was a junior in college. I was going to be a professional athlete. So it's whenever my college career ended, that was it. And as is often accompanied by a death of an identity, there is this like existential crisis. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, if I take this part away of me, like a lot of eggs were in this basket, not from like a really leaning on this for professional success, but just like how I viewed myself.
Yeah.
What's left? What else is there? At that point, I was a political science major. I think because I was interested in history, I'm not going to run for Congress. Like, I don't know what really the end game there was whatsoever. But I happened to be taking an intro to psych class my junior year. Had zero exposure to psychology apart from like, I don't know, being interested in serial killer TV shows or like just like the stuff that we all watch on Netflix. I don't know. But like nothing above that like passing interest. But my intro to psych professor, I really liked, found it really interesting. I was like, hey, you know what? Let's take this leap of faith. Let's just go full send into a psych major and see what happens. Because I know I'm not doing anything with this poli-sci major. So like, let's see if psychology is the thing. And thankfully got like full support from my parents. Not that I needed it, but like, was definitely encouraged. Like, hey, if this is something you're interested in, why not? It's not like you chart the course for the rest of your life based off of what your college major is. So graduated with a degree in psychology and promptly realized there is quite literally zero things you can do in the world of psychology with a bachelor's in psychology. Simultaneously, I still love baseball. So I actually started working my way up in professional baseball. I worked it was a baseball operations intern for a Major League Baseball team, which is like the scouting side of things. And what I found really interesting, both drawn from my own experiences as a head case of a baseball player, and just in seeing that teams would throw millions of dollars at these 18 to 22-year-old kids without taking into account like how well they were mentally or emotionally, I once again got re-triggered into wanting to explore psychology more, because it was just weird to me that scouts would evaluate players without actually measuring anything from a psychological wellness perspective. And like I said, quite literally millions of dollars are on the table here, and they're not looking between the ears. They're just looking how far the guy can hit the ball. So with that, I was like, you know what, maybe being in professional baseball is not my life dream, because that was maybe me clinging on to that identity. That's part like, oh, I'm going to be the general manager of a Major League Baseball team. There's only 30 of those. Like, I don't think I'm so special in that line of things. I was going to be one of the 30 in the world. So, realize, hey, if I want to do anything in psychology, and at this point, I think sports psychology, I need to go to grad school. So applied to graduate school to a PsyD, Doctor of Psychology program, went to grad school thinking I want to be a sports psychologist. And I want to work with professional athletes on like mental performance and mental toughness, yada, yada, yada. And I'm very sure in that I picked my dissertation chair as someone who had been the clinical psychologist for NFL teams, Major League Baseball teams. I did my graduate school dissertation on the relationship between mental toughness and on-field performance for professional baseball players. I had set the track. Like, I was good to go. And so I'm along this track. I am doing my pre-doctoral and postdoctoral internships. And I did my postdoc at a place that was an adult addiction treatment center. And I found it was really interesting. I get licensed. I start to open my private practice of like, now it begins. And then for some weird reason, the CEO of this treatment center, with me being licensed for 2 months, said, hey, do you want to be our clinical director? I was like, oh, okay. That is not something that was on my radar. I always was interested in like leadership stuff. I think just coming from a sports background, like I like the team aspect. I like, and just interpersonally, I'm comfortable like being at the front of the line from a leadership standpoint. It's like, hey, I'm newly licensed. This pays well. It's way safer economically than like opening a private practice and hoping someone shows up. I can always go back to private practice. let's try this. And became the clinical director of a large, well-respected addiction treatment center in San Diego, and really loved the work, loved the team aspect, loved the interdisciplinary aspect, loved the hustle and bustle. I found it very like intellectually stimulating. And so just from then on, just fell into like the leadership side of behavioral healthcare. Was the clinical director for a couple years, had some kids, realized that I didn't want to live a 24/7 on-call existence and have a child under 2 years old. And I did experiment with doing both of those things at the same time. It doesn't work.
Ill-advised.
Ill-advised, would not recommend. So started to like pull out of being clinical director, stayed on there part-time to do neuropsychological assessment. That's what my jam. I love measuring things and quantifying things. It's, I think, the last relic of the stats nerd baseball operations guy that still exists in present tense, Max Doshay. Started pulling out of there, and then got approached by a couple people I respected a lot in the field of like, hey, Max, there is no women's mental health and trauma treatment in San Diego. You've identified, along with us, see that this is a need, because I would constantly get women come up to me going, hey, Max, can you refer me to a gender-specific treatment center? Because I don't feel comfortable processing trauma in front of men. I would try to refer them to somewhere. Place doesn't exist in San Diego. And opened up Monima Wellness Center as the sole dude who works for it, which is very interesting. That's a whole nother area of dynamics I could go into. But the additional thing that I didn't have on my Max Doshay life vision board or bingo card or whatever you want to call it is, you know what? I'm a psychologist. I never went to business school. Let's try on the CEO hat. And became the CEO of a mental health startup, despite never being a CEO before and never working at a startup before. In retrospect, that is frightening to say those words out loud. But thankfully / not so thankfully, what we do is really needed in the field. So the treatment center grew and took off very quickly and clearly worked, and have fallen in love with the whole CEO life from the perspective of like, I get to be peanut gallery for like 10 million things. But less out of the direct clinical services. Because I'm now a startup person, I wanted to open a neuropsychological assessment business. So I opened up KMN Psych so I could still do some clinical stuff and still do neuropsychological assessment. We identified that there was a vacuum in LGBTQ plus services in San Diego. So we opened Element Q Healing, which is an LGBTQ plus mental health treatment center. So as it sits right now, I'm the CEO of 3 mental health startups and a dad of 2 children under 4 years old, and loving it. But once again, if I'm 37, I think, 37 currently. If I were to ask the 33-year-old version of me, the 30-year-old version of me, the 27-year-old version of me, the 24-year-old version of me, the 22-year-old version of me, the 18-year-old version of me, literally every single age I just mentioned would have assumed my life would turn out a completely different way career-wise. Like literally, it's like, even though it's like a semi-linear path, it's not really. Like I found myself in situations where I would have never predicted I would. And for me, it just instilled this importance of like cognitive flexibility and intellectual curiosity, and the whole confidence, humility aspect of it. Like, hey, CEO of a women's treatment center. Like, I don't know, but like, I think I'll be able to figure it out. Like, and hey, let me surround myself with like really smart women who like know how to do the thing as well, and be humble enough to like let them do their thing, and I'll just hang back here and do whatever I do.
All right, so I feel like I have to ask the loaded question immediately following you kind of walking us through that journey. And I love kind of the backtrack vision of like, look, it's not a linear path, right? If you literally ask every like 2 to 3 years prior, I would have predicted that my role, my partnership, like what I was doing in general, it just would have looked different. And so I think it speaks to the need to obviously not just pivot, but also be open to a lot of the things that are presented to you. Because I think you said, like, perfect example, here you are 2 months post licensure and you're like, all right, I'm going to have my own private practice. And then you get a like knock on the door. Hey, do you want to be the clinical director for our program? It's like, whoa, that was not at all on my radar, but like, here's this opportunity presents itself, and I weigh the pros and cons for why that might be a choice that I want to make, but you get to make it. So I say all of this. I love that you walked us through that, because I'm also just picturing this graph that's like all over the place, but it's like, it's still connected, right? Like we're still on the same journey. It just doesn't look, completely straight. So back to it. Do you see yourself as successful?
Do I see myself as successful? Yes, I do. Like objectively, compared to the average 37-year-old psychologist who is a decade-ish post-licensure, yes, I am very objectively successful. And it sounds really gross for me to say that out loud, but like, I know I've done a good job. Does that mean I've capped like, hey, now I'm complacent? No, not whatsoever. And that's a value that's been instilled with me since, birth. As far as, hey, don't be complacent. I mean, if I was complacent, I'd be doing private practice that I started 10 years ago. And no knock against that person. It's just like so many doors have opened up career-wise, financially, and just like growth internally. I wouldn't have developed leadership qualities that I was able to develop if I didn't just lean into this journey.
Yeah.
I'm a better person because I leaned into this journey. I'm a better dad because I leaned into this journey, even though that has nothing to do with literally being a father. I've grown a lot as a human being, even just since being a CEO over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. I would say I've developed a lot of skills that didn't exist in being a clinical director.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love all the things. And I love that you're continuing to say, like, am I going to be complacent? No. So I'm just excited to see, like, whatever ends up being on your bingo card moving forward. Like, is there a fourth business on the horizon? There's, who knows what the future holds.
I'm done answering that question because I continually am wrong. So in a good way. But here's the thing, though. I don't want that to also be misconstrued by someone as like, oh, you're a workaholic. I'm not. If things stayed exactly where they were right now, would I be content? 100,000,000%. I would. I'm not a shark, which is like, if I don't stop swimming, I die. It's not that whatsoever. So it is, we talked about the balance of humility and confidence. There's also the balance of drive and rest, like just being okay with stillness and being driven to do more. And it's a tightrope sometimes, but I think life is most fulfilling and we are most successful when we're able to effectively walk that tightrope.
Yep. Could not agree more. And that feels like almost like that in itself is some imparting advice that can be internalized to the young adults and parents of young adults that are listening to this podcast, getting curious about like ways in which they can also shift their perspective to see like what's important as they're learning to embrace that nonlinear path for themselves or for their child. So Max, thank you for carving out time to share your story. And honestly, thank you for saying yes. I don't say this normally to guests, but like, I just love hearing about your journey, but thank you for saying yes to some of those experiences where someone came knocking on your door and said, hey, what about this? Because I think if you hadn't been open or curious to that we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, or maybe we would, and it would just look different. But regardless, I just appreciate you for saying yes.
Yeah. Happy to do it. We'll add podcast guest to the weird non-linear resume.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a wrap.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at lilyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.